What? It's your turn, isn't it?
Nothing. I'm just in a good mood. It's always my turn, Gary.
Good, then go.
Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hankinades. I'm Joshua Solomon, and this is our host, the Honorable Gary Hopper.
Hey, so I'm trying to come up with all the titles for Lynne on when I posted on Faceplant.
She's just a
You
title
got like too
collector.
many.
She's a title
No,
hunter. She's got 1,000 of them.
My best title is Mom.
I know. I was gonna say that you stole my thunder
Uh-oh.
because I was looking at Honorable Captain, Lynne Blankenbeker. I included Esquire, right?
there you go.
I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty good.
But
But I
that's just
but
Is
I
that a title or a suffix?
I don't know, isn't it? What is
It's a
it?
suffix.
Suffix?
Some people would argue it's a burden.
But I was looking at all the titles for you, and I said, yeah, but to your kid, you're just Mom.
Just Mom.
That's it.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty great
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
Keeps you humble.
It does. It does. She keeps me on my toes, even at 28.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when they get older and more educated, it gets worse.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah. So anyway, young lady. Oh yeah, I wanted to do the so what was it? How do we find that? Do you have that Pierre guy? The
Sure,
Frenchman?
I can find it for you, Gary.
All right.
All right, you keep talking and fill the dead air while I find it.
No, I think dead air is good. I think we should just have like 10 minutes of dead air one night.
Yeah?
Just sit there and just not
see
say
who
anything.
notices?
See if anybody notices.
We'll get a phone call.
We would.
Just like last week. We explained that you weren't around, but we got a phone call from a lady who says, "Where's Gary?" And when I told her you weren't here, she hung up on us. She never actually asked a question.
I got in trouble for that. So I was on criminal justice, right?
Okay.
And I got to leave to do the show, right? So I leave to do the show, and the people on my committee are yelling at me, "Dude, we're just about to exec, and we have like a 10-to-9, ratio. So
Yeah.
it's not the optimum." So I basically stayed on Zoom, and we didn't really start voting until I got outside. So I just had it like sitting there, and Democrats did not like the fact that I was on Zoom while I'm driving.
Are you the chair?
No.
Okay.
That'd be a little bit over the top even for me.
Chair the committee while you're driving down the road.
Well, I just testified for election law last
You
week.
did? Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they got mad at me.
So, Gary, you wanted to talk about this guy
Yeah,
real
it
quick.
was
Well, he
just-
has a nice quote, right?
It is a great. So anyway, people quote people on Faceplant, and this guy, somebody quoted. I can't pronounce his name.
So, Maximilien Robespierre.
Robespierre.
So he's famous for his actions during the French Revolution.
Oh, my.
And he says, "The secret of freedom lies in educating people, whereas the secret of tyranny is in keeping them ignorant."
Very good quote, right?
That is an excellent quote.
Except,
Well, the quote is still true. What he said is still true, except how he. Go ahead, tell him what he did.
So, during the French Reign of Terror, Robespierre came to dominate the Committee of Public Safety.
Public safety.
Public safety. His committee was tasked for public safety in France, and during their reign, they systematically executed 17,000 perceived enemies of the revolution. So
17,000 people.
what came out of his mouth was nice.
Yeah, the rhetoric was really, really nice.
Yeah.
You can't argue with that statement, but you can probably argue with his
If it
execution.
was literal execution.
Of his ideas.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, so he
Well,
was.
thank goodness we don't do that today.
Not
Not
yet.
yet. But
Yeah.
you know what? I have to say, today I quoted Walt Disney. We were talking about, we were actually talking about the Space Force and their role in maybe the next war or whatever. And so we got to talking about the 1970s and when Star Wars came out. And I said, well, like Disney said, if you can dream it, you can make it, right?
Right.
And so, we don't know what this new regime is going to dream and make happen. But the stuff I never thought of, never dreamt of, is happening.
We got to keep up with what they're dreaming, with the number of executive orders they're signing on a daily basis. We're going to start seeing executive orders. We're going to see an overwhelming number of executive orders to the point where we don't know what's in them anymore.
Yeah,
I don't think we know what's in them now.
No. Exactly.
I take a little comfort.
And they're going to go a little bit overboard, and hopefully they end up in the Supreme Court.
Well, I take a little comfort in the fact that, it's a new administration, and so not everybody's in place yet. And so there's a lot of executive orders, but if there's nobody to implement them, then they're dead in the water. So let's hope that some of these executive orders that maybe you or I don't think are really, really great. I have to be careful about my words. I am still in the military. Although I should say right now, none of my views are the views of the United States military. I'm not endorsed.
You still have to be careful.
Yes, I still have to be careful. But if there's nobody, and I'll give you a really good example. Under the Obama administration, President Obama put out an executive order that said we had to have 1,200 more mental health providers to the VA. And I was working at the Pentagon at the time, and we were trying to, frankly, I literally said in a room full of admirals and generals, I said, well, if I could birth you 1,200 more psychiatrists, I'd do it. They don't exist.
Right.
And so, it was an executive.
That would be a big responsibility for you.
To birth them all?
This seems a lot.
Yeah, but so I said what really needs to happen is we need to have policies in place that incentivize people to go into the mental health community, and maybe give some loan forgiveness for people who will serve in the VA, right? But you can't just make an executive order that you can't execute, and that was non-executable because there weren't 1,200 mental health providers available in the country who would have qualified.
Right.
So
and never mind that. I mean, you can't just say, oh, well, we need this many people in this role, right? Well, you can't do that for multiple reasons. First of all, you got to find the people that are in the roles.
Yeah.
You got to find qualified people.
Right.
You got to have the money to pay them.
Exactly. And so you had unfunded mandate, first of all, and second of all, they just didn't exist anyway. So it's my hope that with this voluminous number of executive orders, I fear a little bit that maybe there's been some difficulty transitioning from the legislative role to the executive role now, and hopefully he'll get some guidance on how to be an executive and not a legislator.
He's being guided every step of the way. We can guarantee you that.
So, but I don't know. We'll have to pay attention.
Okay, so anyway, we were I forget whether I was talking. I think I asked you if you wanted to come back on, or you asked if you could come back on to talk about China.
China. Yeah, it's a big,
I don't remember where
Isn't that where that virus came from?
The China
the
virus.
Wuhan virus.
The China virus.
Virus that originated
the
in China.
Wuhan Clan China virus.
I can call it the China virus all I want because that mandate doesn't have any money in it to enforce that mandate and fine me for it.
Oh, well, give it time. So anyway, Ms. Lynne, so what you wanted to talk about this Taiwan, because China, as soon as Biden took office, flew, I think, 12 aircraft into. Now, I'm confused. That's pretty normal. There seems to be a difference or a nomenclature problem I'm having. There's the Taiwan airspace, and then I think it might be different than the Taiwan air.
I can. So there's.
It seems like
international airspace and international waters extend 12 miles out from the coastline.
Correct.
And that's the rule all over the world, right?
Yep.
And so this is something that we've run into in the past. Whereas in Libya in 1984, you remember the Gulf of Sidra shootdowns,
right?
There was a Gulf there, and Libya claimed the entire Gulf as their territory, but their territory, internationally recognized, is the 12 miles from the coastline.
Right.
So inside that Gulf, there is international airspace.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a difference between what is international airspace. It extends 12 miles out from your land space, right?
Right.
What we in NATO generally refer to is the air defense identification zone.
That's okay.
Meaning
That's the words.
We're
yeah.
not going to let you get to that 12-mile mark without identifying you when you're within 100 miles. Right?
Okay,
So
all right.
there's a distance beyond that 12 miles that it's perfectly legal for anybody to fly into. But we are actually going to send sorties up and follow you.
Make sure you don't make
and identify you. It's an air
Okay.
defense identification zone. And typically, without warning, we don't do that, right? We will warn an adversary country that, hey, we're going to be flying, a training flight, a monitoring flight, and
Right.
we're going to be within your identification zone, but we're not going to go into, right? So typically there's a
airspace.
warning there, right? But what was egregious about what happened a couple of weeks ago was that China, for the first time in a few years, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know, for a while, took 8 bombers and 4 fighters and just went ramrod right into the air
Taiwan
defense
airspace.
identification zone within Taiwan, forcing Taiwan to come to an alert status,
right.
right? And then we sent, I think I said it was the Stennis last week, but I think it was the Roosevelt. I
They
think
sent a strike group.
Yeah, we sent the
We didn't just send a carrier. The strike group went.
What's the difference?
It's a lot of different ships, right? So it's just more, but we don't send a carrier out by itself anyway. You don't just
Right.
float a carrier somewhere.
If
It goes
there's
with,
yeah.
it's a battle group. It goes with destroyers and all different other kinds of ships that can support it.
anti-submarine stuff and everything.
So all the stuff that can support that carrier.
But the fact that happened within 24 hours of the inauguration, it was they're pushing buttons.
Well, I don't know if you can remember, but when I was running for Congress, I said it every single time I got up and spoke. I said, if we're not careful what happens in this next election, I said, what I predict is that China is going to start harassing Taiwan. We are going to send in a carrier, and they are going to start harassing us, and this could have a very bad outcome. And I said, it's probably going to happen within 6 months. Well, I was a little off on my timing because it happened within 6 days. But China started harassing Taiwan. Then our carrier got buzzed. Remember, our carrier got, China came over our carrier. And
They went over the carrier?
Yes, they were right over it.
And there's even more concerning than that is China has recently developed what they call the carrier killer missile. So it's an air-to-ground missile or air-to-ship missile that has the ability to evade. Not just be guided, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can take Tomahawks and we can redirect them midway through, right? Midway through their flight path. The Chinese missile, their carrier killer missile, I can't remember what the official designation is. It has the ability to autonomously evade an anti-missile missile. It can evade any defensive measures sent toward it, and its specific design is to destroy carriers, right? And we conduct these freedom of the seas operations in the South China Sea all the time, right? So
Right.
now we have China who's pushing our buttons on Taiwan. We have a carrier group in there, and they're seeing how close they can get to that carrier with one of these carrier killers on board. That's the way I'm.
Well, I will tell you that, first of all, we sort of saw this coming, and it did happen. And so if folks, before, if they thought the sky was falling, it was just kind of like, well, whatever. All these predictions are coming to fruition right now. And so, I think that China in I think it was 7 days built a 1,500 bed COVID hospital. They call it a COVID hospital, but on that island, that chain of islands, everybody knows they've built an island chain out there.
Right.
And that island chain is designed, it's a cove, and at the center of it is a giant hospital that can take thousands of casualties, something we don't have in the capability in the China Sea. And one of the reasons we were so wild.
Well, wait. Why would they build a giant hospital?
Casualties, so they can get people, patch them up and get them back out. So one of the,
I guess I'm ignorant. So this hospital, where is it in relation to Taiwan?
the The ones in the island, or the new
The one that
COVID
you just
hospital?
talked about, where they just built a.
I don't know
zillion-
where the new one is that they just built, but they were able to build a hospital in 7 days. They can house
I think
1,500
the
patients.
point
That's
there
pretty
is
impressive.
the manpower and their willingness to put things together. If-
And the fact that they're building all
if
these
you
hospitals.
needed to build a hospital in downtown Boston, could you get it done
In
and
7
complete
days.
and staffed and equipment in 7 days? The answer is no.
No.
Not
No.
under any circumstances.
And-
but the Chinese can do it.
Right. So, in desert or in Afghanistan and Iraq, the reason we were at war we're still at war, but we were at war for, 17, 18, 19 years, right?
Right.
We've been at war since 2001, and we've had about 4,000 casualties in all of that time. We lost over 50,000 people in Vietnam in a much shorter conflict,
Right.
arguably. So our reasons that we were so wildly successful, number one, we had tourniquets that we didn't have in Vietnam, and so patients didn't bleed to death. And if we can keep a young, healthy body from bleeding out and keep a pulse on them, they will survive. And so that's why we had a very low death rate. We also had the advantage of being a ground operation. So if you were hit here, we could get you in a Humvee and get you to the first battle aid station or to the first cache, get you patched up, get you to the roll 1, the roll 2, the roll 3, get you on an airplane that could take hundreds of patients and fly you from Bagram or CAF or one of those Bastion and get you to Landstuhl, which was the roll 4, before we could in a matter of hours get you over to Walter Reed, which was the roll 5. So these were just accelerated.
Wait. You used a lot of words there. So what's a world? What one
Roll
and two?
1. So roll 1 is like damage control surgery. It's that typical MASH meatball surgery. Get you in, get you stabilized, and get you to the next level of care. So there are different levels of care. So by the time you get to the roll 3, say at Kandahar or Bagram, that's the place where you're going to see more specialized surgeons, vascular surgeons, neurosurgeons,
Right.
eye surgeons, who are going to be able to do a little more intensive stabilizing surgery. The rest of it's been damage control up to this point. And then we can get you on a plane to Germany.
If necessary.
Right. And then Germany, they can start doing the more extensive work. And then when we get to Walter Reed, it's, the patch-up surgeries and, maybe it's preparing a leg for a prosthetic, something like that. So let's change theater. So we were wildly successful because we were a land operation.
We had the logistics in place.
And you can land a giant airplane at Kandahar Airfield or at Bagram. We don't have those capabilities in the China Sea. If you're in the China Sea and a carrier gets hit and we got 4,000 bodies in the water, how are we going to transport
Right.
them?
I mean, we've got an ally. We've got Taiwan.
Yeah, but how
Yeah,
are
but
you
they're
going
going to be under attack.
And and our biggest roll 3 hospital will probably be the Comfort of the Mercy, which is great, and we can park that off the shore by Tripler or by Guam or someplace like that, where there's another hospital, Hawaii or Guam. But you can't land an aircraft in the middle of the ocean and you're not plucking 100 patients out of the water and flying them anywhere.
Right.
Not in that theater. So, and the Deck of the Mercy and the Comfort can't take big aircrafts to be able to medevac patients quickly. So, China has definitely got the medical advantage by having a hospital sitting right in the middle of the ocean. Like that island they built, it puts them at an advantage. We don't have one of those yet.
So your contention is if they're building hospitals that rapidly and in those locations, they're preparing to do something.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, logic would tell you that.
Right.
And keep in mind, none of this is classified. I'm not sharing information from being a military officer where somebody gave me some classified information. I mean, you can Google the island chain and see.
No,
it's
I knew
there.
about the
Yeah.
island. I knew that they
you
were
can-
encroaching or extending their reach
Mm-hmm.
in the in that area of the world by creating islands.
Yeah,
And
that-
things.
COVID
that-
is a great distraction, though, for what's
they're
going on.
using
over
that.
there.
No, they would never
going
do
back
that.
to the airspace issue that we discussed, right? They take an island, or they take open ocean, and then they build their own island out of nothing, right?
Now they get
There's-
100 more mile radius
now,
around that.
Now there's a radius around there that they can claim as their own, and they've built enough of these. They've now created an area in the South China Sea that is off limits.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So it's been very interesting watching what's going on and watching this whole, this whole China event unfold. It's as we were talking earlier, when I was at the Pentagon in 2012, 2013, and we were doing tabletop drills if we had a chemical attack or a nuclear attack or a biological attack on this country. And remember, my job is military medicine, so I don't do the strategy for how we're going to fight a war. I do military medicine, but my job was to determine whether or not we had enough resources here within the United States that if we were attacked on our own soil, did we have enough decontamination rooms? Did we have enough isolation rooms? Did we have enough equipment, ventilators and stuff like that? And, should we have a major attack like that? And like we discussed, one thing we never talked about during that time was the toilet paper crisis and how we were going to deal with that. And that is truly because of the fear that got spread during on social media. And we, in 2012 and 2013, weren't looking at social media as a tool to spread misinformation. Most people weren't really on Facebook yet. It wasn't like a huge platform where people, and so lots of misinformation got passed very quickly through all these social media platforms and the media. And then what happened? Everybody went out and bought toilet paper. I grew up in Florida where we had hurricanes all the time. We filled our bathtub with water. We didn't buy toilet paper for a crisis. And how a respiratory virus created a toilet paper scare is indicative of, number one, having, and I don't want to say get control of the media because I don't believe in that, but controlling the message and making sure that a factual message gets out.
Well, I think, honestly, Lynn, I think that's part of the problem. Okay, so if you look through our history, if the government always told us the truth, right? If they just were in the habit of telling us the truth, then when they said, don't worry about this, we've got this under control or whatever, people wouldn't panic. But the government and the media have been lying to us for 20 or 30 years. So when they say something, it's, yeah, sure. So you like, I don't believe ABC, CNN, or NBC. Mm-hmm. I don't care what they say. I can listen to it for maybe 3 or 4 minutes before I want to, detonate my TV.
Yeah, well,
right. So it's the part of the problem isn't it, and now you have people that are off the reservation talking about all kinds of lasers changing the temperature and all kinds of stuff like that, and people are so desperate for truth and information. They almost believe anything at this point.
People are starting to take memes as gospel, which cracks me up. Like there, all those memes after Bernie Sanders had those mittens on.
Yeah.
And I was shocked at the number of people who said, I saw Bernie Sanders was, like they had him at the Kentucky Fried Chicken in, Mississippi or something. I saw Bernie Sanders was in town. Do we need a ticket? I'm like, it's a meme, folks.
Right, yeah.
Like people are believing memes, and when you believe a meme, you're in trouble.
Right.
And it's just, it's easy to see now that I'm armchair quarterbacking, but it's easy to see how people believed all that stuff on social media and they completely freaked out.
Right.
And so that number one, we never talked about a toilet paper crisis, but I did say way back then that the best way to cripple our country economically was to drop a biological weapon, for lack of a better word, but a virus in a ventilatory system, make it a respiratory one, drop it in a ventilatory system, and you'll take us out very quickly. And that is exactly what happened in this country. Now, whether it was intentionally dropped or not, I don't have enough, I don't have any, I'm not privy to information that would tell me yes or no otherwise. But, it got here. And it did. It did a number on our country. And now we're still reeling from it. Now we've gone from no mask to wear a mask to only wear a surgical mask to wear cloth masks to wear only N95s. Now we're up to 2 masks.
Oh, 2 masks. Come on.
But no. That's
I
real.
know. I heard
him. You got to double up now.
I heard the moron say it, but I
saw it in a meme.
But what was supposed to save the day? The vaccine.
Right.
So once we got the vaccine, everybody was going back to school, all the restaurants were opening, and the masks were coming off.
Right, and then they
That
say,
didn't
now they say
happen.
no.
Right, now they're saying, not only are they saying no, they're saying keep your kids home, put on 2 masks.
Because they figured out the control works.
And, but while we're all over here,
And that's
deciding how many masks we're going to wear.
That's why the toilet paper stuff happens. Is because because if you look at the government said, and I think Trump was just following along with what Fauci and those guys told him because he didn't know, right? And they said all we have to do is control this, lockdown for 2 weeks and we'll be good.
I'll tell you, in March of 2020, the 2 jobs I never would have wanted as president of the United States and governor of any state. You were damned if you did and damned if you didn't. Nobody knew anything about the virus.
Right.
And so you had a camp of people on one side saying shut everything down for public safety, and you had medical experts telling us to do that. And then you had another whole camp of people saying, how are we ever going to get herd immunity if you don't let us get exposed? Let us get exposed. Let us use common sense. And you had medical experts on this side supporting that. And so it was so divided. But would you have wanted to be a governor or a president in March of 2020 when people were dying from COVID? And I'm not saying a lot of people died, but people did die. Who wants? I mean, nobody wants that. And that was, I don't, 2 jobs I wouldn't have wanted at that time. I mean, you were, so did the cure, lockdown, shut schools, close restaurants, was that worse than the disease itself? Well, arguably, yes, to our 12-year-olds who are committing suicide.
Yeah.
I saw last week there was one school system. Oh, man, I don't know. It was just a passing headline. But essentially the school system finally threw up their hands and said, okay, we're going to open back up. Because within the one school system, between elementary, middle school, and high school, and there may have been multiple high schools within this particular district. I can't remember what state but the one school district had 18 suicides. And they said, you know what? We're going to open up regardless.
A lot more kids are dying from suicide than COVID.
Exactly.
Well, and I worry about, I'm in the military, and I worry about our next generation of warfighters. The kids that are 12 today are going to be warfighters in 6 years. Some of them. Right?
Yeah.
Some of them are going to want to go in the military. And are we going to have enough kids, young people, to serve and defend this country? And I'm a little worried that the answer is no. I mean, we've had, kids in masks. They're now afraid to go out. Like when you see a 2-year-old in a mask, I don't know what the long-term ramifications are to that. Are they going to be germaphobes the rest of their lives? I've been saying ever since I've been a nurse, I've been a nurse for 35 years, wash your hands. And we couldn't get people to wash their hands until all of a sudden there was a pandemic. So there was a silver lining. Maybe now people are washing their hands. But what is that next generation of children going to look like?
I know my granddaughter is, she wanted to do something, and she said that she didn't want to do it because she was afraid of COVID. And I get pissed, not at her, just pissed at the system, at the news, at the media for lying to children. So I said, honey, let's look this up together, because she kind of going to want to believe teachers and all that stuff. And so I looked up at the CDC website. I says, the number of children in the United States of America who have died from COVID-19 at your age is 138. Then I looked up, this is the number of people that have died from swimming accidents, 3,500. I said, your chances of dying from swimming are a lot greater, like quantum leaps greater than dying of COVID-19. There is no chance that you're going to die from COVID-19 at your age and the fact that you're healthy. And I'm sure that 138 were kids that were had all kinds of other...
Well, there's all kinds of things,
And the bumping up of those numbers, right?
Yes.
Did they have something else, right? And
did they actually die of something else, but they also had COVID?
Did they really have COVID? Because now, literally the day after the inauguration...
That's a coincidence.
The World Health Organization released their new guidelines. You need 2 positive tests and symptoms to be considered COVID. So how many of those 138 children had 2 positive tests and symptoms?
Well, and they're
Right? This
also
whole business of asymptomatic transmission just went out the window. Because if the World Health Organization says you need 2 tests and symptoms, then that means me, a healthy person with no symptoms, does not need to wear a mask.
But I also
He
think
gets a little.
no. I agree, and there's a lot of people who feel that way, and they're relying on the science, right? And I look at they've changed the test now. So the PCR test, the old PCR test, tested the RNA.
They've changed the sensitivity of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the old threshold was, it's an RNA test. So I swab you, run the swab. If the swab shows any trace of COVID RNA, you are positive. So that's detected. The threshold is detected or non-detected. But any other test you get is a number, right? It's like 20 parts per million or so much, right? Right? And so you have a quantitative or qualitative number. This PCR test was just detected or not detected. So you could have 1 million little cells or 1 cell, but you were COVID positive if you had anything detected. And that RNA could be dead RNA that you're shedding. So I could shoot you right now, Gary. You could die. There could be blood on the floor, and we come back a week later, and you're dead. And I can scrape up that blood and go, you know what?
She's planning something.
She's got your DNA.
No.
Makes
But I
me
can,
nervous.
I can scrape up that blood and say, you know what? This is Gary Hopper, right? You're not dangerous. You're not going to be able to hurt me, but that's you. And that's exactly the same thing. Some people are shedding dead RNA, but they don't take it and swab it and grow it in a petri dish and watch for multiplication. So they don't know if you even have an active virus or not. So many people, arguably, who are positive could be at the tail end, had COVID, just weren't very symptomatic. I had a head cold, didn't think they had COVID, probably did have COVID. It's a SARS virus. So, and then 2 weeks later, they're shedding dead virus, and for whatever reason, they got to get swabbed, and bang, they're positive. And then they go in isolation for 14 days.
Right.
Which is something that's really, I think, wreaking havoc on people's mental wellness.
Oh, yeah. Well,
And-
I'll tell you the other thing, and I'm not sure I've shared this on the show, but one of the other things that's wreaking mental havoc on the people in New Hampshire is one of the greatest help for people in recovery for 12-step is 12-step programs, right? It's all free. It's people helping each other, right? All of them in the state were shut down immediately. All of them were shut down because the churches were shut down. And once the churches shut down, there was no place for them to meet.
Right.
So you now end up with an entire group of people that were helping themselves, were left in the cold, and the frequency of relapse is wicked high right now.
Well, yeah, what do? You sit at home and you drink because you're like, you sit at home, you turn on the TV, and they're like, everybody's dying, you can't see your family, you lost your job, the stock market's terrible, like these were people who turned to alcohol to cope before, or drugs.
Right, yeah.
So with no support system and no, none of that, just like you said, that human contact, of course they're gonna, it makes perfect sense that would happen.
Yeah, it was.
And, yeah. 10 years from now when we're studying this, 10 years from now we better have our masks off. We went to Aruba for Christmas. I took my family to Aruba. And my daughter, we were in line at TSA and in Aruba, and they made us take our shoes off. Even though we were TSA pre-check, they still made us take our shoes off. And my daughter had her mask, and she was fumbling with everything. And she goes, are we ever going to take our mask, get rid of the mask? And I said, Shannon, on 9/11, they promised us we wouldn't be taking our shoes off eventually. And we just took them off. And we let 20 years pass that we've let TSA make us take our shoes off.
Yep.
And we're still doing it. So
Yep.
if you don't think in 20 years we're not wearing masks, I think they're here to stay, sadly. I don't know how we're going to get rid of them. If they still make us take our shoes off for one shoe bomber.
Shoe bomber. One
what do you think
failed
they're gonna-
shoe bomber.
Right.
It's not like he blew
What
up
do you
the plane.
think they're going to make us do with masks
And he
now?
had so little explosive that it wouldn't have done a whole lot of damage where he was sitting.
And we set up an entire new agency called TSA as a result of, right? Of one, that was
Well, I thought TSA was set up because of the idiots that flew into the towers.
Yeah,
No,
but
that
it
was
was all come out of
Homeland
9/11,
Security.
right?
Oh,
But the
okay.
shoe bomber, yeah.
Special.
But then we started taking off our shoes, and we're still pulling our laptops out of our bags. And
I finally found out going through the airport last year why my mom always said wear clean underwear. Because they made me take off my stupid belt.
in your pants.
Pants fell right down.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
That is horrible.
Well, if you're lucky.
Luckily, I have a chiseled buttocks. Oh, sorry. I had to say that. So, no, actually, I didn't have to say that. So, what is, do you feel, you're in the military, I'm not sure you can answer that. My concern is,
Remember, none of this is the position of the military.
I know, but I don't want you to
sure.
get in trouble.
No, I'm
but-
not going to say anything classified, and I will never say
No, not
anything negative about
classified.
our president.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
not
that's
gonna-
where I was going.
No, I
So-
won't disparage our president.
Well, then I will. So I'm just concerned, and I think reasonably so, that he has said that his support for Taiwan is solid as a rock. Now, I don't know what kind of rock. It might be talc, but he said it's as solid as a rock. But to me, all that stuff on his son's laptop, the Chinese government must have a lot more information on that guy than we even can possibly dream of. And is he compromised? Is he actually going to defend Taiwan versus?
I don't have any sense of what he'll do as our commander-in-chief. I never thought that we'd have 7,000 National Guardsmen protecting the Capitol.
Yeah.
Like
That's
that.
that's a
Guns
smoke
and walls
screen.
don't work.
Yeah,
and
guns and walls don't work. That's true.
So I can't really say. I don't sit in a skiff and listen to the classified information on where we're
Why do
headed.
they call it a skiff?
It stands for
It does
secure.
stand-
Yeah, it's got it's an acronym.
So it's a Navy vessel.
Well, no, the skiff is just a. It's a little room, and it's all it's got not leaded walls, but walls you can't hear through, soundproof, and
Okay.
that sort of stuff, and all the information has to stay in there. You can't bring your cell phone or your smart watch. You can't bring any of that stuff in. So, I know that the skiff has been very active lately, but we have a new administration.
That would
too,
make sense
so-
anyway.
So who knows? With what's going on in China, I would expect the skiff to be very active right now because we had Chinese fighters over our aircraft carrier. I'm hoping that the skiff was busy,
Right.
with that kind of information.
What is the law of the sea as far as enemy countries flying over other navies' vessels? Is there a restricted airspace that is enforceable in international waters?
I don't know what the law is on flying over, other, especially, people to be your enemies, right? If it were a Canadian vessel out there and we were flying over, we'd probably be dropping them some Molson, versus
Right.
versus a Chinese vessel or plane flying over our carrier.
I don't think there's any maritime law that dictates airspace, any type of perimeter around military vessels, but you'd be just plain stupid to ignore the warnings to stay away.
Well, yeah, and we would consider that a hostile action, I'm sure.
It would be considered hostile if you flew an armed aircraft into the defense zone of an aircraft carrier or frigate.
Yeah, but if they flew two Chinese planes over one of our aircraft carriers,
Technically, it's probably not against international law, but
It just seems like it's
absolutely provocative.
Well, I know, but it's not just provocative, because if they have the missiles that you're talking about, how much is the admiral of that carrier group responsible for taking that thing out before it ever got that close?
Well, he is. If he felt that was an adversarial act and felt that conflict was imminent, then he absolutely had the authority to do something about it.
Because if it's already over the aircraft carrier, it's too late for him to react.
Yeah, no, I mean, those things.
Well, that's why they get intercepted a couple hundred miles out.
Yeah, like when we were in Afghanistan, I was watching the footage of, they would bomb a village a mile away, and the plane never even got close to. I watched. You'd see in the footage. You could see the village way up there, and you'd see these little white things down there, and that was the people milling about. And then you'd see the missile fly in, and the airplane was a mile away.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't ever over. It wasn't like in Vietnam where you heard them come in and then the bombs drop. Not like that here.
Right.
Anymore. So, but I definitely think that folks should really be paying attention, and I don't think you can just look at one isolated story. You really have to be aware of what's going on everywhere. It's the totality of the circumstances. If you want the truth, watch what's happening. Watch what's happening in China. Pay attention to what's going on with COVID. Watch how we're responding in D.C. Listen to what the what Congress and the Senate's talking about, and kind of put all that together and formulate what you think could be happening. It's we get messages that come down military chains to give us messages, and how we're going to deploy going forward, what our new strategy is. Under the new administration, we write new national defense strategies, and we do those sorts of things. And so, as you pay attention, I mean, the general public wouldn't have that information, but pay attention too to where your family's getting deployed. If your family says, or if they have their book that says, Mandarin for dummies, you might think your family's going to China.
Mandarin for dummies.
I mean, those are kinds of things that you can pay attention to. So,
see, Mandarin for dummies. See what the how much that's selling for on Amazon.
Oh my gosh! Right? You just watch that stock.
And that actually would be an interesting thing. If you could tell what was going on just by book sales on Amazon, I bet you could.
It used to be the case that you could look at other social factors. So the night before the Desert Storms, we were still in Desert Shield, but the night before Desert Storm, every pizza joint in Washington, D.C. was lit up with delivery orders because no one at the Pentagon was going home. They were ordering pizza.
No kidding. That is stupid.
You see? So
that
became an indicator. But somebody noticed that, and then that practice was cut off. Okay, before a large event, we're not going to do this.
No, we're not going to
ordering out thing anymore, right? We're going to have that. We're going to have that dealt with logistically before we get to that point.
Right.
But it used to be that you could tell what was going on in Washington D.C. by how busy the pizza joints were.
Yeah.
Now they're going to go to Chinese restaurants.
Yeah, right. But
Sorry. I'm a bad person.
Hey,
Lynne.
Speaking of Congress, when I was running for Congress, I made a promise to everybody in the state of New Hampshire that I'd work on health care reform for us, and I said whether I was elected or
not,
I was going to figure out a way to do it. And so really happy to say that I made some really good relationships when I was running for Congress with other folks who were either seated Congress people like Dan Crenshaw, Michael Waltz, but then there were some new ones coming in. August Flugler from Texas 11.
How did you learn how to say that?
I don't know.
That's a tough
lesson.
Name.
And Tony Gonzalez from Texas 23 and Mike Garcia from LA. He's out in California. But anyway, I established some relationships, and so I am working on healthcare policy. I am going to be working with Congressman Tony Gonzalez from Texas 23 as part of his healthcare policy team.
Now, are you talking healthcare policy for the country or for the military?
No, for the country.
Okay.
No, and so, we've already heard it. I think even President Biden said it himself. He's calling it Biden Care. And there is going to be a new health care plan that's going to come out under this new administration. I don't think it's any surprise that it'll have a socialized flair to it. We don't know what that looks like yet. And so I'll be helping Congressman Gonzalez and some of the other Congress people with their health care policy on how to hopefully turn that tide. Interestingly, in the United States military, we've always had socialized medicine.
Right, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, we've always had socialized medicine. And in 2017, under the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act, under Section 702, 703, they took that authority away from the military, put it under a new agency called the Defense Health Agency, and now that is a privatized, all 600 military treatment facilities across all services, so that's hospitals, clinics across the globe that are used to be owned by Army, Navy, or Air Force, are now under the control for beneficiary care, just day-to-day care, by this civilian organization now. And we don't have that role anymore. So it's interesting that the federal government felt in 2017 that, that the United States military socialized medicine wasn't good enough for us.
Needed to be privatized.
Right.
That it wasn't working.
Right. And now all of a sudden, the federal government is wanting, under Obama, wanted to give us now the rest of the people of this country a socialized plan. So I find that very interesting, and I'm ready to go with Congressman Gonzalez and kind of go armed with that so we can talk about, hey, you're the very same Congress who decided that socialized medicine wasn't good enough.
How do you mesh that with your role in the Navy? Or are you doing, is your role in the Navy limited to certain times?
Well, I'm just a reservist, so
Okay.
I only do my 2 weeks in the summer, or my 2 weeks in the summer, and my weekend a month.
Oh, okay.
Right, and so that's my only obligation to the military, and then
Unless they call you up because
like when
the
they called
poop
me,
hits a fan.
right? Like so, last year in March, when they called me up and asked me to go aboard Comfort,
Right.
I suspended my campaign and went and did that. So.
Right. Okay. I wasn't sure what.
No, and I'm getting close to retirement. I've been in 35 years, and next year I'll hit my 36th year, and I think it's time to,
Star.
No, you know what? Part of being, in the military is we groom up those younger folks, and
Right.
there's only so many billets. So I'm a captain in the Nurse Corps, and there's only this many captain billets, right, in the Nurse Corps. So there is some commander in 05 who is waiting for me to go home so they can put on some eagles and, and they can have their turn. And that's what the military is all about. So I've had a great run. I've done some tremendous.
How long you been a captain?
Since 2013.
That's pretty good.
It's a long time.
No,
Yeah.
it's a long time. I mean, the same type of situation with my father. I mean, 20 years in the Navy, but he stayed at the same level for such a long time because he was in such a specialized field that there was a very limited number of positions for him to move up
Well,
into.
it was like my dad, right? He would move up to corporal, and then he'd get in a fight. And then
It's a little bit different than that, Gary.
oh.
But, the other thing is in the military, we give up a lot of freedoms. I deploy, and I'm grateful, and I love what I do in the military, and I think I have the best job in the military. I get to care for our warriors, but, I'm getting to a point professionally. It was very hard when I was running for Congress to, I always had to be careful about what I said. We don't have the freedom of expression that the rest of the world gets.
Correct.
Or the rest of the United States gets. Your freedom to speak freely, mine is not. And I have to always be careful that I comport myself in a manner that, reflects credit upon the United States Navy. So I have to do it with character. And I also have to make sure that I don't share information that, loose lips sink ships. I can't do that.
Right.
And I also need to make sure that I am not doing anything that would undermine the good order and discipline in our military. And so I have to be very careful about the words I choose.
Wow, gosh. No, I just looked at the time. I
is
thought
it time to go?
we were only on for like 5 or 10 minutes.
Oh.
Time to up your meds, Gary.
I know. Trying to up my meds.
So give us a quick rundown on what's going on in the house.
I don't know.
Exactly.
It's fun, 'cause I'm sure you run into this. I felt bad. I went over to get basically a box for my a box for shooting. So when I go shooting, I have everything, all my earplugs and everything in one box. Because I use this cardboard box that's getting a little tattered, and I had my state rep badge on and stuff, and the lady was. I see it out in public all the time. Really, people are very nervous about what's going on in this world. They really are. She thought that somehow I had some sort of sway. She said we're really depending on you.
Well, I think we are in this state.
I know, and it's just like, wow.
But it is.
Yeah, it is. But it's horrible that we've gotten to the point where government has so much control that people are looking to government for anything.
Well,
government should be, like a sideline amusement, right?
Yeah.
That's its place as a. It should not be any more important than the Super Bowl. Not to say that in Super Bowl isn't important. I don't want everybody to get mad at me. So, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It should not. It should be you elect them and forget about them.
I think we mentioned this a little bit last week with General Baldock. Is a point that I always make. Government should be limited, right? Mm-hmm. It should be limited to what's in the Constitution. The Constitution is written to limit government, not limit the people. And when we elect folks like you, Gary, we don't elect you to go into session and compromise. We don't elect you to go into session and just write new bills and new laws all day long, right? The purpose of having a multi-party system is to stifle government, right? We want you to go in there and we want you to stop new laws and new regulations from taking place. We want you to rip out the existing ones that don't need to be there. The whole purpose, and the media tries to say, oh, we need bipartisanship. We need to write a whole bunch of new laws. We need government to do this and this and that. No, the system was designed specifically to do exactly what you said. Elect you, you go to Congress, right, locally or nationally, and stop government from interfering with me.
Right. So, a really good example, and I know we got just a second, but I testified before the Election Law Committee on Friday, and it was House Bill 97, and basically it was to move the primary date to August versus September. And statutorily under federal law, your primary has to be at least 45 days from the general election, and that's to prepare ballots and make sure that you can have an election, on November whatever, that Tuesday in November. And so for the military, that's a problem, because if you have a tight race, say, and then there's a recount, that delays when the general ballot comes out, and so you may not get your ballot in, especially if you're in an austere environment. And so I was testifying and talking about how an August date would at least give us a little bit of a buffer and make sure that we weren't disenfranchised and it would get mailed back and forth. And somebody testifying, and I don't want to tell you who it was, but said, we've been doing it this way since the 1900s, early 1900s, 1910 or something. So why do we need to change it?
Doesn't mean it's the right way.
And I was like, you need to change it because I'm sitting here telling you that I've lost my right to vote as a military member. There's only 2 states with a tight primary, and that's Rhode Island and New Hampshire, and the rest of the country does it the other way. And I said, your argument fails. 48 other states have a longer primary.
Right.
And so what's wrong with them? They don't seem to be having military members testifying before their house asking them to extend the date. And so to your point, I think, and yours, sometimes you have to unravel what doesn't work. And for military people to be disenfranchised and not have our vote count, that doesn't work. So vote ought to pass on House Bill 97.
So what does it do?
It changes the primary date to August.
A week
August,
or
a month.
A month.
Yeah, so it gives us...
So now then we would have to amend the Constitution.
No.
Yes.
I don't think so.
What? We have to sign up on June to be a state legislator. It's June 5th? 15th.
or something like that. Yeah, it
Right.
was like,
So now you're just, you've narrowed that window of running for state rep or state
just back
senate.
it up a month.
You can't.
Why is that written
That's
in our state
it's in the Constitution.
In the state constitution.
State Constitution. That's the time of sign up is in June. Not you can't just
Well, you
arbitrarily.
can still sign up in June and have a primary. You. Let's face it, Gary. Everybody
June,
starts.
July, August.
Everybody starts campaigning before they ever sign their name on the dotted line. The only thing that name
Not
on
me.
you don't have to because people will vote for you.
Yeah, they're crazy. So before we leave, I got to tell you, in case you didn't know, right? Did you know that if you watch the movie Jaws backwards, it's about a very wonderful shark who rehabilitates disabled people?
Gives them legs.
Yeah.
And Jaws one.
Did I tell you that joke?
No, it was on Faceplant. Hey, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks. It was great to see you guys.